For our show. A very happy birthday to Tamery Astudio. I'll be broadcasting from Denver, Colorado tomorrow. Steal the Story, Please. The film about Democracy Now!'s 30-year history will be at the C Cinema in Denver, as well as in Boulder. And I hope to see people in both places. I'm Ramin Sheikh.
When you're ready to let go of that car you no longer need, KFAI is ready for you. Our vehicle donation program is available 7 days a week to help you arrange for your free pickup. It's easy, it's free, and it matters. Donate at kfai.careasy.org or call 855-277-2346.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarland, host of The Conversation with Al McFarland. You're listening to 98.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarland. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. This is day 4 of a historic week, a week-long broadcast series here at George Floyd Square. We're calling it George Floyd Week. We're leading this set of conversations up to the commemoration of the death of George Floyd right here, Ground Zero, 38th in Chicago. We're broadcasting this program, and we thank our partner, KFAI, for the radio broadcast, and our television partner, SPNN. We're broadcasting from the Worldwide Outreach for Christ Ministries at 3808 Chicago Avenue South. We're here today for the next hour. I promise, robust conversation. We'll be here tomorrow as well, and we invite you to tune in, to click on, if you're using social media or radio or television, be a part of the conversation. Our objective is to always say that we have things to talk about and that our voices matter, our feelings matter. Here we are approaching the 6th anniversary of the death of George Floyd, and that event was cataclysmic. It was global. I want to invite you all to go to the Inside News website. You'll see a story that talks about the worldwide impact of the death of George Floyd. Protests happened in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, in South America. We chronicle some of those in the story. That's our lead story on the upcoming edition of Inside News. It's on the streets now. And you can go online at insidenews.com to pick up the article as well. Read it, comment on it, share it to your networks. It's an important story. Our voices matter. Well, today I want to begin with 2 colleagues and friends in our community who are eminently qualified to share their experiences, their stories, their feelings about what happened here. The theme is justice. And I want to begin by inviting Minnesota Justice Research Center leader, Justin Terrell, to the program. Justin, thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
You know, what I've done is ask everybody to think back of where you were and what you were doing when you got the news of the death of George Floyd. What impression did that make on you? What happened with you personally?
Yeah, so at the time I was the executive director of the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage. So it was literally my job to advise the governor and the legislature on issues impacting the African American and African immigrant community. And so I'll share that my wedding anniversary is on May 23rd. And so I was planning on taking a week off and having some time off. And I got a call from, I want to say it was my aunt. Said, what's going on down on 38th Street? And then, we know how things kind of progress from there. We know the different stories the city told. We know that the video came out. I remember watching it at home on my phone and just being, frankly, At that point, I was pretty used to these situations. And, we just got to work. So me and my team, we made a list of 100 community members we knew we needed to check in with, and started calling folks and checking in with the neighborhood. Pardon me. And we spent the whole, my staff, Amber Jones, she was on the scene like, the next hour after we had talked about it. And so we just got activated. After talking to the community, we came up with some suggestions for the governor. We said, one, there needs to be, independent investigation. We recommended AG Ellison. Number two, there needs to be, we need to start talking about a consent decree. And there were some other recommendations we made as well, but they were all coming from the community. And so, little feedback there.
Right.
Ultimately, I ended up being involved in planning the memorial service for George Floyd, working close with the folks who organized that. And, it's not a stretch of the imagination by any means to say that it changed the
Right.
trajectory of my career, changed my life. I don't think I slept for a week once the uprising kicked off, right? Responding to nonstop crisis. And so,
Go ahead.
I'm just
Keep going.
catching the
Keep going.
feedback. And so the reality is that there's a lot of things that happened during that time that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of our community for a lot of ways that we showed up. I had the honor of hosting the governor at George Floyd Square during the uprising. I also brought some Republican leaders down and took them to the 3rd precinct after it had burnt down and explained to them why it had needed to burn down. And we were able to get, between 20 and 30 bills passed at the legislature that work towards police accountability. And I won't go through all of them, but I will just name that one of the things we changed was the licensing process for officers in the state. So the licensing body that controls every officer's conduct in the state was pretty much inactive for 40 years. And since they've adopted a new standards of conduct, they've been very active in holding officers accountable for the last 2 years. And that, the data doesn't lie. You have more officers losing their license. There was one in the news last week, and I think that's a step in the right direction around how we have more effective tools in 2026 to hold officers accountable. But let's be clear, like we have a long way to go to repair trust and to figure out a way to make sure that something like George Floyd never happens again, where you have elders and children begging officers to be responsive, and they ignored them and let a man die in front of the world to watch. And so that's just not who we are as a community, and we should be about the business of making sure that never happens again.
And so, where are we now? What do you think?
Yeah, well, briefly, I could say, so I'm not going to put it in terms of progress and whatnot. I will say that there are things that are changing. The reality is that we have a model for very what I consider we have a really strong model for community policing on the north side through Charlie Adams' leadership at the 4th precinct, and some of the work that they've done and the interventions that they've taken and the relationships that they've worked on with the community. I mean, obviously there's documentaries made about it. Number two, I'll say the consent decree in Minneapolis. The city is making progress on that. And I think that there's a lot more work to be done there, but the mechanisms that the state has control over holding them accountable to, I think, are working. And then this year we worked at the Capitol to pass a bill that would give officers the tools necessary to set up what's called a non-fatal investigative unit. So a lot of times violence in our community gets facilitated by the failure of the criminal legal system to intervene effectively. And this session, we supported a bill that would help Minneapolis and other departments set up, treat non-fatal investigations the way you would treat a homicide. And so what that does is, if you're not waiting a week to do the investigation because no one died, and you're jumping into these situations early on, you can prevent the retaliatory homicide that typically comes in non-fatal situations. And so you got less people going to jail, You got people feeling like they don't have to take the law into their hands. And we've seen this work in St. Paul, where they're just solving more crimes. And so statewide, the law enforcement solves crimes at about 47%, which is embarrassing. We want to be the safest state in the country. Right now, we're number 8. And I think we got a little bit of work to do, a lot of work to do if we're going to be number 1. And these are some of the things that take us in that direction.
Let me introduce my additional guest here, Todd Western III, friend, colleague. He is a farmer, 6th generation farmer, soybean farmer. He's a co-founder of an organization called Iowa Farmers of Color. And he's a senior donor advisor at Greater Twin Cities United Way. That's where I know him from. I'm on the board of that organization, and he does a marvelous job in getting our community connected and people connected to that resource. Also, he's a board member of North Point Health and Wellness, a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, and a member of the Monitors Club. So Todd, good to see you. Thank you. And I enjoy talking to you because you bring a variety of ideas into play. One, your work as a farmer in the food chain, understanding the economics, the business of it, but your work in philanthropy, in creating donors, your work in community. You are a coach. You're active with young people.
Yes.
And your work, as we said here, as a fraternity member and a director leader of North Point Health and Wellness. I'll start with the same question. What happened, or how did this news come to you? Where were you when you heard about George Floyd being killed?
Well, thanks for having me, number one. As you mentioned, I am a 6th generation farmer. We have a farm that's been in existence since 1864. This year we celebrate 162 years that my family's been farming the farm, corn and soybeans. And we have operations here in Iowa and Minnesota. And so ironically, not ironically, but guess where I was at when this happened? It is May, it is planting season. So I was actually on a tractor in Iowa planting corn and soybeans when I got the news. Much like he said, unfortunately, when I heard the news, I said, well, there's another one, right? And so not knowing this was not going to be just another one. And so in Iowa, which is like 3.5 hours away, I heard the news, kind of went about my business. And then as I traveled back, because I live here and I go back and forth, as I traveled back to Minnesota, you start hearing things, and you start hearing about the riots and things of that nature. So I said, oh boy, this is something really bad, and worse than I imagined. And so, but at the same time, it was people standing up. Enough was enough. And then to find out that is actually televised on, you could actually see a person dying. That was the traumatic part for me. Like, you hear about a person getting shot, and I hear about it, and you can only imagine, but to actually sit there and watch it, not only for that day, but we've been watching it for 5-6 years now, right? So we watch a man die as much as you watch it and can stand to watch it. So that had a traumatic effect on me. But it was one of those things where you had to navigate, and then with the ensuing I would call it an uprising. I wouldn't call it a riot. I would call it an uprising where people said it was enough. As you mentioned, I'm with the United Way, and I just come out of 28 years in the corporate world, and I just transitioned to United Way. And I will say that, God has a hand in everything. And I will say I was glad that I was at United Way, because United Way held space during that time to reflect, to be vulnerable. And they had open, I think it was like 2:00 each day, to those opportunities to just come in and just let things out. Had I been in the corporate world, that would have been complete opposite.
What happened in the corporate community, as far as you can tell from the people that you're connected with?
It would have been.
What did happen? I mean, are there stories? Did you talk to friends?
Yeah, I talked to friends.
What were they saying about how the corporate halls were feeling during this thing unfolding?
Well, because I also went through Rodney King. I also went through, Cleveland. I also went through other ones, and that's bad. I'm sorry it happened, but where's the report? Where's your numbers? Where's this? Where's that? Right? You get it to a certain point, but this was not your ordinary. This wasn't your ordinary because it was televised. You actually got to see what they've been saying for all these years. I didn't do anything. I didn't have a gun, and I was killed yet. Right? So in this situation, you'll be able to see it. and you're like, wow, that is traumatic. So what United Way offered the opportunity to do is, we had these listening sessions where we just got to come in and say, I'm feeling this way. And so, like I said, God had a hand in that one. And that's why, I transitioned from corporate, found myself in philanthropy, didn't expect to be in philanthropy, but I have a feeling I know why, and with the mission of United Way, uniting change makers to affect social good, right? And then to rise up to challenges that no one else can solve alone. And so because of me being United Way, we were able to build over about $3 million to the Rebuild Fund to help rebuild Lake Street for all the damage that was done there. So I wasn't on the sideline on this one. With Rodney King and the rest of them, I was on the sidelines and man, that's too bad, it's bad. But United Way provided that platform where I could actually do something. I was able to work with our donors to raise money to help rebuild the community. I was able to talk to donors and get their insight and their feelings. And so, and then to be a change maker, that is our mission, to be a change maker, unite and advocate for social good.
I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland. We're broadcasting live from Rodney King Square. We're at the Worldwide Outreach for Christ Ministries here at 3808 Chicago Avenue South. Our thanks and gratitude to Pastor Curtis Farrar for making this wonderful facility available. And we thank the people who are here, who are coming to watch. If you want to be part of the program, let me know. Raise your hand. I've got space to bring you up to the program as well. I'm talking to someone who's in the audience who's smiling at me, and I thank you for doing that. I want to bring two more voices in. They were here yesterday, and the conversation was so rich. I said we had to continue this. We ran out of time yesterday. And Reverend Carmen Lewis is here, and she's here along with her partner in life, Brother Manu Lewis. Carmen, Manu, thank you both for being here. Let me ask you both to tell our listeners and viewers who you are. Introduce yourselves and talk about the connection you have to community, to mobilization, to our shared vision of how we must be responsible for building a future that works for our people.
Yes. So absolutely. I had the pleasure of having the conversation yesterday with where I was at, just as a brief backdrop. During the time of the lynching of George Floyd, I was the executive director of this neighborhood and the neighborhood across the street. So, yeah.
Name the organization.
Central Area Neighborhood Development Organization, better known as CANDO. So I was over CANDO and Bryant. What's really unique about this corner right here, you have Powderhorn on one corner, Bancroft, Central, and Bryant. So it's really 4 neighborhoods here in the Circle of Motion that a lot of politics happen within these 4 neighborhoods. And so that was one of the reasons I was out, as well as my faith demanded me to be out. I would say I have a pastoral background, been pastoring for over 20 years, did a strong pivot here recently and become an Episcopal priest next month. So I really believe that part of our faith and part of our movement has to be centered in justice. It's not a either or. It is a both and when it comes to that. I believe centrally that it demands us to respond in such a way that we believe that our faith demands us to respond. So we play many hats. One of those hats that we play currently is that we started a program called Minnesota Restorative Training Program in partnership with Sabathany. I'm the vice chair of Sabathany's board. And so with that, long story short, and my husband can give you more context on that, the goal is that we train up 80 justice impacted Black and brown folk for when something happens again. There will not be a turning to outsiders, if you will, for culturally relevant services as far as being able to lament, which is what you were speaking of, and be able to express and process the trauma that we are experiencing. Racialized trauma, bodies of culture, Black folk, we experience trauma differently, especially when it comes around racism and different things, violent crimes that we've seen. I'm also a trauma-informed yoga instructor as well. I have a whole lot of different things that I do that I'm able to encompass in the way in which I show up for a community. So right now, by the end of this year, we will have 80 Black and brown folks that are healing practitioners and circle keepers within our community. We are not here to replace therapeutic services, but be more of an a la carte. My connection with that, with the Black church, I also do a lot of work around racialized and religious trauma. And so really just making sure that there is a intersection between faith, mental health, and processing trauma. I think that we do very well by quoting quoting scripture, but then again, we're dying prematurely. That is not the will and the faith that I signed up for. I want longevity in my life. And so being able to process that is number one. It's a sign of humility. Let us know that we are people, triune, body, soul, and spirit. And it also is the ultimate testament that we can be lights in the midst of such darkness and be able to be spaces of wholeness and health, walking in mobile, so that when we come into contact with the community, it's not just a Sunday service experiences. It is a connection that's able to bring healing wherever we go.
Manu, good afternoon. Good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Introduce your work, your mission.
Okay.
Before you do that, though, I didn't get a chance to ask you yesterday, what were you doing when the news about this tragedy hit your mind, your spirit, your body? What did you go through?
So thank you for asking that question. Thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome.
So
Okay.
hey, you know, thank you. So yeah, when so I was actually living on Broadway and Broadway Lawson in the Willer Hay community, and got in the evening time, I got a text message from a community member showing the video. So I seen the video, and I think that night I fell ill, right? I think I got food poisoning. So it wasn't until Saturday night that I came to, looked at the TV, and was like, I'd never seen this movie before. But I remembered the video and would put two and two together. So as I looked out of the window and looked down Broadway, I can see something that I'd never seen before.
What did you see? Describe it. What did you see?
Less than a block away, it was a barber shop. Right down, everything was on the south side of Broadway. It was a couple fires. I seen trash. I didn't see too many people like moving around, but once I started doing my homework and tapped back into social media, I seen my city had burned down. Right, I seen individuals that didn't necessarily look like they were from the community acting out in the community.
What do you mean by that? How do you discern whether somebody looks like they in the community or not? I mean, here I'm raising the question because the world, or some people want to say, our people burned our neighborhood.
Yeah, that's
and they
not
blame us and don't distinguish all the players,
right,
and all the motivations and all the strategies.
Yep.
And so we end up leaving this picture of our defectiveness as a culture and as a community. And that's not the case.
That's not the case.
So how do you tell who's doing what in the neighborhood?
Yeah, and that's a good question. From an outsider looking in, individuals in the community may look like they're from their community. I'm from over north. My whole family was from north. My grandmother moved here in like 1943 or something like that. So amongst my older relatives, they always had this keen sense when somebody was in the community that wasn't from the community. They welcomed them. That, tried to figure out where was they from.
Mm-hmm.
So North Minneapolis has a culture. Even St. Paul has its own culture, and the individuals from those communities know each other, right? What I seen was in North Minneapolis, not that I grew up in North Minneapolis, but I work for a couple nonprofits, even North Point Health and Wellness, doing a lot of community impact. So I know the people that fluctuate throughout the community. What I seen a lot of individuals that they weren't from the community. Two, the acts that they were engaging in are not the acts of the community. The community that I know about are really proud about certain things in their community. They proud about structures in the community. Individuals in the North community, I don't think anyone had a reason to burn down an AutoZone or a barbershop.
But they did.
Right. But they was burned down, right? So when we look at the influx of individuals that don't necessarily have a care and concern for the community, yes, they're bringing that anger and rage into a community that they don't necessarily have stake and skin in, and can do anything, and it's perceived that, well, our community did it, right? But individuals know. And from there, we actually had to get engaged and round up individuals that were born and raised in the community to start doing something, start actively engaging with the community to let the community know, hey, we're here. We're not here to burn anything up. We're here to actually help. So we started from the community level up.
Talk about the Justice Project, that you're working on now.
Okay, yeah. So with Minnesota Restorative Practitioner Training Program, and at that time, I knew as a restorative practitioner, I've been doing circles for volunteer for like since 2012. What I realized is that we need more individuals who had a care and concern for the community, for humanity, right? To actually get the tools and the confidence and the networking that they need to address issues, like we said, before they actually happen, building those healthy relationships, because I understand that healthy relationships mitigates more violence and, traumatic acts than anything. So with the training program, we're going back to the original approach at repairing harm and restoring values and humanity, right? Which is taking a restorative approach, right? Because, wherever we have populated, we have come in contact and there has been conflict. We see it all over the place. So how do we, without the need to go to these certain institutions which have not necessarily done right, but as a community, how do we invest in each other and build those relationships so we can talk about some things and address some things before they happen, while they're happening, and with solutions so that they actually never happen again. So we're, like my wife said, we're by the end of the year, we'll be untrained. Have trained 80 justice impacted Black and brown body individuals to be circle keepers, because we need more individuals that have that cultural relevance that we are here to help us.
So it sounds to me like you're talking about, and then Brother Terrell, jump in here, giving our people the tools and the sense of not only equity, but I'll use a bigger word, a sense of sovereignty, a sense of justice, a sense of owning the process of freedom and the process of justice. And I think to a large degree, we've been yesterday, you said you're tired of hearing resilience. Why do we have to always be portrayed as resilient people? And you didn't mean it in a bad way. You meant that's kind of how we've been characterized, so that we are expected to suffer, right? And to be suffering without experiencing all of the things that come with fighting, to not be in suffering, not in sufferation. So owning justice, what does that mean? How does that look, Brother Terrell?
Yeah, I
jump into whenever you want to.
I love this question. So Brian Stevenson, I probably said this on your show before, but Brian Stevenson talks about how the opposite of poverty is not wealth, that the opposite of poverty is justice, right? If you think about poverty, there's nothing just about it and the experiences that you go through. I mean, I grew up homeless in this city, so I can tell you a thing or two about it, right? Daniel Surratt.
Tell me about it.
I'm happy to go into it, but
okay.
I mean, I used to stay at the 410 shelter downtown, the blue and white building, all of that. That was my introduction to Minneapolis, and I still fell in love with this city. But the other thing I'll name is just that Danielle Surratt is the author of Until We Reckon and runs Common Justice out of New York, which is a restorative justice organization. And she talks about how the opposite of trauma is not healing, but that the opposite of trauma is agency. And so when you talk about what you're talking about, Manu, is that agency piece, right? So trauma rewires the brain. And you can probably talk to this better than I can, right? Trauma rewires the brain. The body keeps the score and all of that. You lose the ability to do certain things. Agency is about regaining that ability.
Absolutely.
And what I love about the restorative justice piece is that, we're working on a report right now that I can't talk about because we present it tomorrow, but it's about community violence. And one of the things that I was just reading it last night, and it took me back to sitting on my stoop and watching a drive-by happen down the block, and the car zipped past my house while I'm on my cordless phone back in the 90s, right? And just thinking, my reaction was like, I think we could fix that.
Yeah.
Like, I know who is in that car and I know who just got shot at. And I'm like, this is not brain surgery. And I think that restorative justice and these circle keepers that you're talking about could be as prevalent in our community in the future as community violence is prevalent now. Actually, because and I promise I'm making a good point here, because what is the problem? The problem is that if there is violence in our community, there is not an intervention from the criminal legal system that we can rely on, right? The intervention has to come from us. And we can choose other interventions than violence. We don't have to choose violence.
Yeah.
We don't have to be Cersei and we don't have to be Kendrick. You know what I'm saying? You know, most days I want to be Kendrick. But like we can choose restorative justice. We can choose to have the conversation. And we know that when we do choose that, and I know that you've been a part, I know that y'all have been a part of those conversations, that when we do choose to have the conversation in our community, it can become the most effective intervention. And we don't need to rely on the criminal legal system. We actually can give Black folks permission to each other to rely on each other.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Reverend Carmen, build on that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, these are not new practices. So let's be clear, man, you and I we have not coined this. This is an academia, and this is what Black folks been doing. I'm a pew baby. I'm a church kid, PK kid. And so I remember being called into circle plenty of times. We just understood now the origins of it and did more research, and was able to craft it in such a way that we were able to get the proper funding. So folks who come through the training are able to receive a stipend, things of that nature. But when we think about what trauma is, the rewiring of the brain, the too much, too fast, too soon, and our sympathetic nervous system consistently being in that fight or flight, there is no way that you can, I shouldn't say no way, it becomes difficult with making grounded decisions, making decisions that are not harmful. When you're in survival, it's an either or. That's why with everything that's being cut, I'm like, people gonna eat. The question is who and what, right? And I think what happens a lot of times is, especially and I can say this within different sectors, faith sectors, Black church or what have you, we have disconnected ourselves so much for the sake of surviving. So we are great at spiritual things, but we forgot that we have a soul and we are housed in a body. So that's why you have people that can pray the house down, but yet and still diabetes is on the uprise and their body's out of control. It's not an indictment. It is really what the separation of self happens. What I love about Justin referred to it as restorative justice. We pull on the practice, calling it restorative practices, because the goal is that we reculture and we make this part of our practice, honoring what we've always done. So then the goal is, how do I be all I can spiritually in its fullness? Also walk through the process of what it means to be an emotional being, the soul, and then be as perfect as I can be, or as good as I can be in this body. And we have this place of alignment and truly self-agency. I think a lot of times we live out of whack with, or out of balance, and it causes a lot of harm. And trauma will do that. Our parasympathetic nervous system, and my grandmother was a Hummer. Dr. Resma speaks about this. She will rock. Old Kojic. If you don't know what Kojic is, Google it. Pentecostal, you will know about it. But she would hum all the time. Didn't talk a lot about her past. But come to find out, when we did research after grandma left, she was a survivor of the Black Wall Street burn down, right? She was from Oklahoma. So even though she didn't have the academia or the tools that we have today, spirit knew, so she would rock and hum. When we learn how to listen to our body and follow what the soul is telling us to do, and then be able to live in that alignment, I promise you we'll come out better. The other part of that too, yesterday we was talking about having the resilience or having the self-agency to stop and halt. I had to walk away from being the ED over these communities. And Justin would tell you, we loved that we was killing and still is killing the game. But my body said it's enough. I had to listen to my body. It wasn't about praying, wasn't about seeking God. It was like, girl, calm down. All right, take the cape out and pause and then heal. So I had to understand that it's time for battle, but it's also time for healing. And that is a lot of places that we have not taken the resilience of snatching up and being able to say, I got to stop so that I can regain and get myself better to be able to go back.
Let me throw this in, pivot a little bit. I wrote an article some 20 years ago called Black Crime, Black Punishment. The premise was that our communities are managed as a resource in a pool of lack and of want and of need and of anger and everything else. And I characterize that by saying, and I call this an Al McFarlane-ism, they get the money, we get the misery.
Absolutely.
But the misery is intentional,
Yeah,
it's managed, it's maintained, and it is a source of income
absolutely.
and business and enterprise.
Yeah.
And I liken it to this as a solution thought. I say that, like everybody else, I would love to see a cancer pill.
Mhm.
That you take that pill in the morning, you don't have cancer, or you don't get cancer. But we know that the road to that discovery is a place called Mayo Clinic, for example. And Mayo Clinic is a multi-billion
Yeah, yeah.
dollar enterprise. And so the enterprise of solving a problem creates economies, towns, jobs, wealth, everything. How do we experience, if we are the poster child for all the disparities, health disparities, wealth disparities, education disparities, how do we turn that around? The word is agency. You
Mhm.
brought that up, Justin, so that we make solving problems our business, the business of solving the problem, the revenue streams associated with problem solving, revenue streams that come through and grow our capacity and our ability in community. Now, why is this important? Right now, I think after the COVID and also after the George Floyd attention getting activity, the state and companies started paying attention. You said that in corporate, the attitude was, oh, a riot, oh, somebody died, oh, COVID, but the report is due at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah.
And that business was doing business, right? And it didn't stop because of all these other things going on. Well, but the attention was shifted after George Floyd. That's why it's so unique. George Floyd stopped everybody in the world
Mhm.
in their tracks, and we could see what we've been talking about all this time.
Right.
So, bring this home. How do we organize and sort of take our place as the co-authors
Mhm.
of as the authors of our future, the co-authors of the future of humanity, and as partners in all of the processes that deliver goods, services, growth for community in a way that's financial for us, that we make money doing it. Justin, jump in first, and then
Yeah, I can be
Todd, jump in.
I can be brief because excuse me, allergies are terrible. But I can be brief because the reality is that everything that you just named that you would encourage Black folks to build, we have built it before. We have built it numerous times.
Let me jump right back in, because the point in the article I wrote, Black Crime, Black Punishment, the point was, if there's a jail, let us build it. If we have law enforcement, let it be our sisters and brothers and sons and daughters who are the judges, the prosecutors, the jailers, the janitors, the lawn service around the jail done by our lawn services, the laundry services, all of this, the whole supply chain,
Yeah.
the economy. So go ahead.
Well, but I would like us to not have to maintenance jails. But
I mean, of anything, jails, schools.
But my point, though, Elder, is that we have done that, and every time we've done it, it has been systemically destroyed with cruelty. And there's vote counts, there's bills and legislation that approved the 94 plan through Rondo, and they did that all over the country. I just saw a reel the other day that suggested Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a movie that exposes the conspiracy from the Department of Transportation to do exactly just that. And Toontown was a metaphor for Black folks. And it's like one of those things, I don't know if that's true or not. It could be an AI fake. But my point is that it happened in real life.
Yeah.
And that we have repeatedly built up our communities, and repeatedly they have been systemically dismantled. What I think we need to focus on now, and this is why we work on the criminal legal system, is because the Department of Justice was formed to investigate and prosecute the KKK. That is, our first response post slavery when we ran into white terrorism was to say we need an intervention from government that can actually prosecute and take on this threat. And our country is better if it does. And today, not only do we have a DOJ that's looking the other way while our state gets invaded, but now we can't do reparations, but we can do $1 billion fund for J6 supporters. And thank you, like which tells me everything I need to know about what is possible for Black people in this country. Nothing without permission from the sickness of white supremacy. And so, job number one to me is to not just think about building anymore, but how do we actually build structures that will allow us to protect what we build? How do we defend our families and each other?
How do we defend our families and each other?
I think so. For me, the way I look at it is, we do the research. We like to do our homework. I want to know everything about the justice system. I want to know where every lever of power is. I want to make sure I got people all over it that can make sure that that system works in our benefit. Because if you can transform that system, you can transform healthcare, you can transform education. But just the justice system was the first tool that we found any kind of success with from the government that could protect our people. And frankly, like, you're watching people use it for their benefit. Why shouldn't we adopt the same mentality so that we actually have some sort of protection for our people? And then from there, we got to deal with reparations, the Constitution. We have to deal with all the other things.
Todd, your family over 100 years in the business, so a business legacy, right? And the farming business is one of the places to look at how our country has dealt differently from our farmers and the white farmer. And I don't know if that experience comes into play here in this conversation at all or not, but I'm gonna put it in front of you.
It absolutely does. But let me just go back. My father taught me a long time ago that, economics is key.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great divide in America between corporate America and Black America. It's not about race, it's about economics.
Mm-hmm.
In the civil rights, we wanted to end slavery. We wanted to end Jim Crow. We wanted economic inclusion. The last thing we have not done is economic inclusion. That is the biggest thing. That's upstream. What we're talking about is downstream, the effects of that system being bad. That's what we're experiencing. Dr. Martin Luther King was not killed for I Have a Dream speech. He was killed because of the Other America speech, when he talked about there's two Americas. And the only way for America to grow is for two Americas to come together as one, because one America had everything, had all the economics controlled. We got the system, we were at the other end of the system effects.
We get the misery.
We get the misery.
They got the money.
Right. And so, one of the things is that what we have to understand is that we have got to, the only 5 things that we need to really care about is, like they all allude to it: healthcare, right? Economics, jobs, employment, education, banking. We have got to get in a position where we're in a decision-making position in those areas to make those decisions, to be in the boardrooms. I will contend that George Floyd gave us that opportunity because it was so egregious, it was so bad that what happened? We have DEI departments now, right? Now, they're I know what you're gonna say. Don't hit me yet. But they opened doors. Otherwise, they had not been open. Because you gotta remember, I'm 6 years old. We didn't know how to spell DI back in 70s and 80s, right? Mm-hmm. So meaning that there are opportunities. And what happened was those opportunities were beneficial because out of this George Floyd, I met Lori James. Lori James has solid roots. I created an organization called Iowa Farmers of Color. There were programs that were created for farmers. There were programs that were created for Lori James and what she's doing solid roots, for the crew in the equestrian club. There's a Black equestrian club that helps Black children, right? That came, a lot of that out of these programs from George Floyd. Mm-hmm. So George Floyd is absolutely horrible. Mm-hmm. But what we did is we seized the opportunity to say, what can we do to be resilient, to be resourceful, to make it happen? But at the end of the day, let's not make any mistake about it, that It's not a racial, it's an economic issue. We have got to be in economics. And so when these opportunities open themselves up, we have got to get in there and take advantage of that. Now, for example, with farming, absolutely. You think you got it bad here in the city, try to be a black farmer in the state of Iowa. Imagine 1864, my family coming out of slavery in Abington, Virginia, establishing themselves in New Sharon, Iowa in 1864. The Emancipation Proclamation had just been done. 1870 hadn't done yet, right? So there were still slaves in Texas, right? KKK is building themselves, but yet the Western family put roots down, dug those roots deep. God bless them. We were able to do that. So then what I do then is I take it upon myself to be that beacon, like my parents. My father was the first black supervisor at John Deere in 1968. How did he get that position? Because we had a similar thing in Waterloo, Iowa in 1968. East side and the west side. East side was black, west side was white. We had a racial issue within John Deere. John Deere stepped up to be socially responsible and said we need to create programs and avenues. So my father went into the supervisor program. He became one of the first black supervisors in John Deere and worked there for 41 years. He went on to be a major contributor to John Deere, where he saved them $500,000 in 1984 by revising how they did certain business practices, all because an opportunity presented itself and you take it, right? Now, you got to be resilient, but you also got to take charge and put your imprint, and then, again, I mean, I can only imagine what that was like, but he did it, right? And so because the Iowa Farmers of Color, what we've done is we united farmers of color around the state of Iowa and the Midwest. We've united Lori James. Lori James has come down. She's gotten knowledge from our thing to come back to Minnesota. We're now collaborating. My son, here's the other thing.
Who's Lori James? I'm not.
Lori James is the founder of Solid Roots.
Oh, there she is. We've met before.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody knows Lori
Oh,
James.
Sure.
Yeah. So she's working on a program where women that come out of incarceration have an opportunity to unite with their children, not in the chaos that they came from, but in an agricultural setting. So we're trying to work with her. She's leading the charge of getting a land space so she can build a space where those women can come back. But the Iowa Farmers of Color also works with her on that. And the last thing I'll say is my son, Todd Weston IV, and there is a Todd Weston V. He's 3 years old. And so my son, who lives in North Minneapolis on 33rd and Alders North, he's a millennial. He recognized that there's a food desert. I never heard the word food desert after George Floyd, right? So he recognizes there's a food desert. He started his own farm operation up here. So now we have farm operation in Iowa. We have in Minnesota. He consults with Lori James. Look how those dots connect now because the opportunity presented itself. So now he has Freedom Farms. He provides microgreens for a Wammy restaurant, for several grocery stores in the metro area, all because the opportunity presented itself. Economics is the key.
Brother, go ahead. I know.
Yeah, I just want to circle back around and
get you up here. We'd love to have you be part.
We don't have enough time.
Can we move you up here? Okay.
No, we got time. Lori should definitely speak. Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to highlight that Bass Reeves was real and the Long Ranger wasn't.
Say more about that.
Well, and to the point of certain individuals throughout history have shown that innately that we have the capacity to, regardless of the suppression, regardless of the social conditions that we have, and it's not being opportunist, but it's taking advantage of the opportunity and practicing what it is that we want to see, right? And I say Bass Reeves because he knew about justice. He knew about certain individuals being held accountable. And he put it into practice how he lived in doing, holding individuals accountable. The Lone Ranger was a fictitious image that someone else benefited off of, but didn't actually do the work. They didn't actually practice what Bass Reeves knew in his heart would make our community a little better. We talk about in that time, right? So I say that to say right now, we still have that energy. We still have those ancestor drives within us to create that which we don't see, right? To take advantage of those opportunities. My family, my mom's side of the family is from Des Moines. And every time we go down there, that's all I see is cornfields. And I'm thinking like, man, that's a lot of work. right? So to hear individuals taking advantage of those opportunities is us practicing what we know is within us, practicing what we know is to be right, right? Like we get the kids around farms, they forget about all the music and everything else. They get in contact with the dirt, with the earth, with the soil, and it brings something out of them. That's a practice.
And the other important thing is those kids, where did they come from? So when I meet people and they say, wow, you don't see very many black farmers. And I always ask the question, who do you think built the South for free? Right. So those kids need to take their rightful place in history to know that their grandparents, their great grandparents established that and went through hell to get there and maintain that. Some were successful, some were not, but they need to know that you came from this. I know, as I always say, when they say we don't see very many black farmers, say, have you heard of the cotton gin? Have you heard of George Washington Carver? Right. So we are part of this. We're not better. We're not worse. We're a part of the same fabric of America that you are.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so that's why, black Americans need to understand, like, we are agriculture.
Yes.
But I would say, have you heard of the Department of Agriculture and what it did with the loans
Absolutely.
and how it stripped black people out of farming and stole our land? And that's my point, is that like I agree with you 100%. We need to have a strong focus on economic development. As a matter of fact, we have always been brilliant at it, and they have always been creative at dismantling it. And so, like the issue to me, and I think we saw this during the uprising. Something I've been very proud of is just how we stepped up and protected our communities during the uprising, how we stepped up and protected our communities during the operation. The question I have for you and for Anthony Taylor and for Adair and for Melvin and for all the folks out here doing this stuff, how are we going to protect it this time?
Here's how you protect it. So if you speak of agriculture in particular, a lot of the reasons why we lost a lot of agriculture, well, put it this way, 1944, 12% of the agricultural world was black. Today, there's less than 2%. In Iowa, there's 86,000 farmers. There's only 59 black farmers, and I know of 5. So 2 things. One, the solution is a succession plan. We all know that grandma didn't and grandpa didn't write it down. It was on a piece of paper somewhere underneath the couch, right? And back then they had 10, 12 kids, right? And not everybody knew the succession plan. That's one way we lose the land. Number 2, it is the USDA, right? The USDA did discriminatory practice, and they did do that. Number 3, obviously we just natural attrition, we lost interest. But those first 2, if we do, that's what we try to teach at the Iowa Farmers of Color. Like, I don't care if you got a grain of dirt this big, put paper on it. Because guess what? If it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're gonna fight over that 5.
Yeah.
The 5 is gonna fight over that, right?
Yeah.
And guess what's gonna happen? We're gonna fight over it. Property tax won't be paid, and in 10 years, the man's gonna take it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So, succession planning. We got to learn it.
Can I insert one more thing?
Yes, sir.
Black independent political power would absolutely protect our black farms. And if we don't get serious about how we develop that and develop the organizations and the strategies and the organizing that goes along with it, black farmers were amongst some of the most organized in this.
And
if the wrong mob thought they was going to roll up on the wrong black farm, they was going to have a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, we have to, like, I understand Frantz Fanon is thick to read, but like, we have to start getting back to the understanding that you cannot convince someone you cannot convince someone of your humanity. There is only one way a man does that. If you got a rock or a boot on my head, I have to remove it.
Absolutely.
I have to stand up. And that to me is like how we have to adopt that mentality in order to protect all the wonderful things that you're talking about. I want to see black people build.
Melvin Carter Jr. is listening, and he I put a note on the screen here. You can't see it, but our viewers can. He said, and thank you, Melvin Whitfield Carter Jr., the dad of former Mayor Carter. We've seen great improvements in police community relationships with black communities since George's execution, greatly due to defanging the Minneapolis Police Department Federation. So that's another power arena. Talk about that. Anybody, Justin, you start. And thank you, Brother Melvin.
I mean, there's so many ways to screw up the answer to this question. I don't know how I want to answer it, but the contract in Minneapolis is public. People can read it, right? Like, so I would encourage people to read the contract with the MPD. There's a couple of things I'm concerned about, but I actually don't think that it does a whole lot to regulate MPD, and I definitely don't think it does a whole lot to in their favor as well. I think that the complaints that the issue we have is really a transparency issue.
Mm-hmm.
When you have complaints that go into the city of Minneapolis, there's all these different lanes. You can go HR, the criminal process, officer, OPCR, all these different, and then your union's going to grieve those. And that's how you keep bad officers on the street. A great way to get around that is the state. Use the post board. If an officer is accused of misconduct, the state has to investigate that, but it has to be reported. And once it's reported, if they investigate that, they can take action on a license. And then you don't have to worry about the sergeants, lieutenants, and command staff dealing with the fallout of that. It's like, oh, my hands are tied. And the union can't grieve it. That's the other thing. The union cannot grieve a licensing complaint. And so that to me has been more significant than the police union contract. I'm not saying the police union is good. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying that there's more dynamics at play here where we have an opportunity to hold officers accountable.
Pastor Carmen, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, and yes again.
You disagree?
No. If I disagreed, I would tell you, but no, I don't. But I do, because I want to just circle back around to the organizing world. Black folks is not a monolithic people, and I keep hearing, and I've heard this, and I probably even said this at one point. The uprise and the murder or the lynching of George Floyd did create a lot of opportunities. Let's not take and continue to romanticize suffering in order for opportunities to be made by Black folk. We know how to create our own thing. It's one thing to have a tree. We know what to do with the tree. And so if we are waiting, it is going to happen, sure as I'm sitting here, that another Black body will die to the hands of injustice. I'm sure even right now. But the question then becomes, how do we get out of this cycle of survival and really be able to tap into our creativity? I believe that faith and creativity is one, that you cannot really say that you're walking by faith and then you're not walking in creativity. So then how do you tap into what creativity is and be able to create the opportunities? When we're talking about self-agency, we're talking about really, I would say, honoring the speech of King of the Two Americas, but also understanding that we're not part of either one of those. How do we create right now what we need, being able to organize? Organizing is really one of the key things. So yes, we're looking at it from where Justin worked as far as the policies and procedures, but Black church, we only look at institutions, salons, those are institutions as well. What is the reclaiming of those spaces as well? Because a lot of us have steered away on what Black churches came out of, which was a struggle. I won't even go into all the bad theology that is taught to be able to even put it, really train our mind that suffering is part of our survival. Life is going to do what it is going to do. I don't want to help life be bad and be horrible, right? So there is a level of creating and self-agency that we have to be able to activate in, acting as if these other groups does not, being aware, but being able to be focused on what we need and out of this place of survival. We can do that outside of the murder of a Black man.
All right. I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland. What a wonderful conversation, as I promised, a robust conversation. And we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow as well. Tomorrow's day 5, the 5th day of our George Floyd week. All of that leading up to the celebration, the recognition, the commemoration of the dastardly deed, the murder of George Floyd here, Ground Zero, 38th and Chicago. It happened 6 years ago. And what we're saying is that we won't forget. We will not forget, and we will work and we will move towards the organizing, towards being in community, towards talking with each other, working it out, and doing what we've always done to make sure that we create the kind of community society we need. I'm going to ask you to come back tomorrow, if you would, and have you on the program tomorrow. Sister James back there, right? Thank you. And I want to take a minute to thank this wonderful panel. Todd, always glad to have you here to hear your story about being a farmer, about being a multi-generational entrepreneur. That's powerful. Mm-hmm. Brother Terrell, Justin Terrell, thank you for your leadership, your work, both previously with the Council on Black Minnesotans or the Council on Minnesota's African Heritage, but now as Executive Director of the Minnesota Justice Research Center. And to the Lewis family, Reverend Lewis and Brother Manu Lewis, thank you both for being here, for your presence and the spirit and the power that you bring and what you exemplify in your walk in community. I want to thank the sponsors, the community partners that help make this week possible. They include, obviously, the powerful work of St. Paul Neighborhood Network, SPNN, broadcasting live, also Minneapolis Speaks, broadcasting the program. Obviously, KFAI 90.3 FM, a powerful, wonderful resource for the community, building community. I want to give a special shout out of thanks to Kowalski's for their support, for Nexus and the Minnesota Humanities Center. Thanks to the production crew on site today, Tajuddin Ali, Melik Saeed, Emma Deborah, Sabrina Ford Rambo, and our remote producer, Jared McMullen. And at the end of the day, I'm going to share invite you to read Inside News. Mm-hmm. Read Inside News. I've got a major story in the paper. It's on today. Today, it's Monday's paper, but it's a story that talks about the world reaction to the death of George Floyd. And we sort of recount that. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm Al McFarland. We'll see you next time.